make co-host?
Yes.
Okay.
Fabulous.
You've got the presentation on your, okay.
I do, so I will share from mine.
And it says it is recording automatically.
Yep.
Well, it's cold up here.
Is it?
I've been cold all day.
Gonna say it's gonna be warm this week. And there's Charlie.
Who's presenting? You are, Mara?
Yes.
So Danny, you could just sit there and do nothing? Nice.
Almost.
That's what I'll do too.
We will, I'll help guide you through what we were gonna do is when we get to public comment, Danny will read 3 minutes each of those 3 public comment that are not related to the items on the agenda.
When we get to public comments, okay.
And I'll give a quick reminder to everybody listening that these are items that will be coming to you at some point and they will be put back into the record when the item comes before you.
I think I'm just gonna do the secretarial. I'm just gonna read them.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's just a pain in the butt to.
Go back and forth.
Yeah. So how you guys been doing? Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Ooh, I don't know how you do it. Retirement couldn't have come at a better time.
Oh, that's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Are
drove
we gonna
down.
have everybody here?
Everybody but Scott. Scott wasn't feeling well.
Ooh, hate to hear that.
Yeah, he said he just kind of felt like he needed to just take a break. Confirmed we had a quorum. He said he would be on if we really needed him, but I told him he was fine.
Okay, sounds good. And we're not voting on anything tonight, correct?
No voting.
Just a lecture. We're having lectures.
I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet.
Ah, I like the sound of that. So do you guys go in every day?
Yep.
Yep.
Everybody going in? Everybody that's an employee of the city, basically?
Yep. All of us.
Wow.
Now, during the summer, we did have split shifts and, some people not coming in for certain times and things like that. I didn't do that, but we did it on a few other different people.
Yeah, well, things aren't looking so good right now for St. Louis County.
No, not good at all.
Yeah.
And the kids are going back to school next week.
We'll see how that goes. Keep your fingers crossed.
Well, I have to say, I mean, mine got through her whole softball season. They had no cases.
Hey, congratulations to the women's softball team at the high school. That was so cool.
We drove to Springfield to watch the game.
Oh, cool. That must
Yeah.
have-
And then she's been doing club soccer, same thing, no cases with soccer. And all summer she did club softball. No cases with any of our teams. So that was good.
My daughter's daughter, she got 2 daughters. One of them daycare, they had a COVID outbreak, 3 of the 7 kids at daycare. So her older daughter had to quarantine for 2 weeks from school. And then she was set to go back this past Monday, and one of her classmates has COVID. And so now she got to quarantine for another 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're going up to Galena, Illinois to visit with them.
Oh, that'll be good.
Yeah, we get 2 different places. And
The high school's going back on a kind of split schedule. So the first half of the alphabet goes in the mornings and the other half of the alphabet goes in the afternoons. And they don't go on Wednesdays at all. So and they don't start, it's funny, their last day of school was on March 13th, which was a Friday the 13th. And their first day of school back is on November 13th, which is a Friday.
It's Friday the 13th. Wow.
I don't think I like those.
No. It's kind of like the black cat walking in front of you, you know, you never know.
Yeah.
Well, we got 2 here.
Sometimes it's actually harder to get on time for Zoom than it is to actually be here.
Yeah. Yeah, you wait to the last minute, you know. Uh-oh. Somebody else, Maddie?
Hi, I'm here. Yeah, my kids are gonna come in and say goodnight, and then I'll turn my video on.
Sounds like a plan.
Oh yeah. Hopefully they'll stay out of here. There's like nothing that they love more than like coming in mom's office and seeing who's on the video chat and chatting with them. But that's usually not at 7 o'clock. So
Yeah.
Okay, and they're starting to show.
One by one.
Anybody watching any good TV programs? Have you seen Tehran?
No.
It's pretty good. It's Mossad in Iran trying to blow up a nuclear plant. It's pretty good.
I'm watching Yellowstone. That's really good.
Yeah, that would cost money though. So I said, I can't do it. I can't bring myself to pay for it.
We're watching the British baking show.
Ah, I heard that's really good.
I've been rewatching The West Wing on Netflix just to feel better.
Oh, I did a little bit of that too, actually.
We watched The Wire, which was really great. I just, it's really one of the great series, I think.
So
That is true.
Charlie, I think you are, let me look for a second. We've got you. We're still waiting on Jeff. We have Mike, we have Maddie, we have Steve, we have Tony, we have Christopher. Scott's going to be out. And we have Annie. So I think the only one we're waiting on is Jeff, but you have a quorum. So we do want to wait and start at 7 in case there's anyone else who wants to listen in. It looks like Denise is on doing our minutes, but we're not going to bring her on to this part of the Zoom.
Okay.
And then it does look like we've got 3 additional people in attendance,
All right.
which is sometimes that's more than we sometimes get in our actual
Meetings, yeah, when
Meeting.
we're in person.
which is awesome.
All right, I got One more minute. I'll wait one more minute for Jeff.
Charlie, have you watched Schitt's Creek on Netflix?
Yes, yes, I love that too.
That is, I let myself watch like one episode a day because
Yeah.
it's so good that I don't want it to be over.
Yeah, it's over for us, but we really enjoyed that. It was good.
Did you, dad and the son wrote it together?
Yes, yeah,
Yes, yes. I thought that was really cool.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. He's in the son's in something else right now too.
Huh.
Can't think of what it is.
I know, well, the dad was American Pie and other things.
Yeah, he was in Best of Show and
Yes, yes.
Waiting on Godot, and yeah. it's-
All right,
Okay, I
Jeff.
think we're gonna start here. Good evening. My name is Charles Sindel. I am chairperson of the Webster Groves Plan Commission. We are a 9-member board of citizens appointed by the city council to review development proposals and make recommendations to the city council regarding future development of the city. In addition to the members of the Plan Commission participating via teleconference, we have a few other representatives of the city I would like to introduce. Councilmember Pam Bliss, City Attorney Neil Brunschweiger, Planning and Development Director Mara Perry, Planner Danny Jandusa, and Denise Bulewski, our recording secretary. I would like to welcome you all to tonight's monthly meeting of the commission and take this opportunity to explain how we operate. As indicated in our agenda, we will begin with the regular session of the meeting when we will hear new applications for rezoning or subdivisions. We will hear staff report and the applicant will explain the proposal. We will then ask for comments from the public. At that time, anyone with interest in the proposal may indicate to city staff they have a question or would like to express their opinion by clicking on the raise hand feature of Zoom. To make sure that we are accurately recording your name, we ask that you identify your full name and address at the beginning of your comment. When you make your comments, we ask that you be as concise as possible and not repeat a point made by a previous speaker. We also ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. One person who is a spokesperson for an organization may have 6 minutes to comment. When all citizens have spoken, the applicant will be asked to respond to any questions that have been raised during the hearing. When we have finished reviewing one proposal, we will move on to the next application. Comments concerning items not on the agenda should be made during the public comments section of the agenda near the beginning of the meeting. When we have completed the regular portion of the agenda, we will go into executive session. At that time, the commission will discuss the proposal and may decide to vote on the application or to postpone the decision. You are welcome to remain and listen to the discussion, but there will be no additional opportunity for public comment at that time. Our recommendations are sent to the city council. In most cases, the city council will conduct a similar hearing and must enact an ordinance before the proposal is finally approved. If the plan commission takes a vote tonight, the city council will likely take up this issue at its first meeting next month. If you want information regarding our vote or the progress of the application, you may contact staff at City Hall. And so now I'm going to read the first item on the agenda, but I don't have the agenda. Is that public comment? Or is it minutes?
You should
Approval
have
of
your screen. I put the agenda up on your
Yes,
screen.
okay. Approval of the minutes. I'm just gonna go ahead, everybody, and act like I'm the secretary as well, so it's, moves a little smoother, I think. Is there any comments about the minutes of the October 5th, 2020 meeting?
Nope.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from October 5th.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the October 5th, 2020 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, public comment. Mara, you're gonna help us out here?
Yep, so we did get some public comment that came in regards to items that are not on the agenda as of yet. So we did decide that we would go ahead and read those items into the record for 3 minutes max. So for anything that's longer than that, we'll read for 3 minutes and then we'll end, but you will have hard copies that were emailed to you. Please note that all the items on public comment are related to the new redevelopment proposal. And so when that does come before you and does have a hearing, we will take any items that have been gathering that we've been getting over the last few weeks and that we'll continue to get, I'm sure, over the next bit of time. All of those items will go in your packet. So just be reassured you will receive it again. But Danny's going to go ahead and read the ones that were received.
Sure, and I will start a timer just to be safe. But the first comment is from Tammy Bem at 324 East Swan Avenue. She's a Webster Groves resident. Her comment about the Old Webster redevelopment project is that I've spent several years visiting retail and residential communities in the US and Europe to discern qualities that make an area more than just good, but great. It looks like planned neighborhoods such as Buffalo, Illinois. It's okay, but if it were a grade, a B or 80%, we can do better. I have strong concerns about the resiliency of the businesses in a crisis such as COVID in a predictable Main Street development. The number one tourist attraction in New York City is the High Line. Property values and businesses have skyrocketed. Is it too late to consider a more modern and innovative indoor or outdoor model, not based on Main Street? A dynamic draw to the area, question mark. The second comment is rather long, so I'm going to set a timer of 3 minutes for it. Just a second. Okay, it is from Ann Hannon. Dear Webster Groves Planning Committee, I'm writing with interest in the mixed-use redevelopment project proposed by the SG Collaborative in the Old Webster area. I've participated in many of the SG Collaborative presentations, as well as the housing forum hosted by the city last year and conversations with the Culture of Inclusion team of the Alliance for Interracial Dignity. I have some knowledge of affordable housing development programs on a national level. And as a resident of Webster Groves interested in increasing the economic and racial diversity of our community, I would like to know more about the commitments that can be made to affordable housing within this development. I heard SG Collaborative indicate that 10% of the units developed would be affordable or considered workforce housing, citing the example of a teacher making $42,000 per year as a qualified resident for one of these units. I have a lot of unanswered questions about this, and I think it is important that residents understand this commitment better before proceeding with the development to see that the commitment will truly meet the objectives of increased opportunity for affordable housing, for affordable living spaces in Webster Groves. I think it is important that there is a clear and transparent commitment as well as a clear protocol for qualifying residents for units that are considered affordable. Here are some questions I think are important for the committee to investigate. What is the income threshold to qualify for an affordable unit? An income of 80% or below of area median income is a standard in some federal programs. HUD lists that as $59,700 at 80% AMI for a family of 3 living in St. Louis County. Rent that is not more than 30% of income, which is a standard to be considered cost burdened, would be $1,492 monthly for this family. For a family of 1, 80% of AMI in St. Louis County is $46,450 with 30% of income affordable rent at $1,161 monthly. And she lists a link to access that data. I think it is important that these renter income qualifications for affordable or workforce housing be clear and presented in a transparent way. I'm not sure that those speaking up for affordable living options would consider these rents as addressing what has been requested by residents. I'd like to consider if Webster Groves could press for more units to meet affordability requirements to serve the needs of our community. I would be happy to see 20% of rental units meet an affordability requirement. If 600 to 750 units are proposed, that would carve out 120 to 150 units rather than just 60 to 75. Third question is, would perhaps a mixed income development make sense for Webster Groves, restricting a percentage of units for varying income bands? Some units, those for 60% AMI or below. I'm kind of running up on 3 minutes now. Should I cut that one off, Maura?
much longer do you have? Is it just a couple more?
It's a couple paragraphs.
We do have a hard copy in that was
Yeah.
emailed to all the members. We'll go ahead and stop it at that point. And then just a reminder, you will get this again in your packets when this item comes before you.
Okay, and I did see at the bottom that Rudy has raised his hand. He may have an additional public comment that's not on the agenda. I will read one more letter that we already received to put on the record. This is from Susan Blaine. To members of the City Council of Webster Groves, I am one who is in favor of development both for financial growth and for increasing the diversity of our city. The proposed redevelopment of Old Webster is of grave concern because of its large scale, introducing up to 1,200 people into a very small area, and one that threatens the way of life for those of us who live adjacent or within the selected area. It will result in traffic congestion at intersections which already are stressed at several times each day. Children walk to and from schools at that intersection. Train crossing waits at Rock Hill can be up to 10 minutes or more, and cars back up further north than Kirkham. Another major concern is the effect the project will have on the habitat of a variety of animals. It is hard to believe that any plan would have come this far when it includes the removal of trees that are natural to Missouri. Some of us have been improving our properties by removing the invasive species and plants and replacing them with natural habitat plants and trees. Some of the natural habitat areas are in danger of being taken from the owners. There are also grant-based projects ongoing in these areas that have involved thousands of dollars from the owners as well as the granting agents, and in some cases with coordination of the botanical gardens. Where's the city's commitment to the environment? I have lived in Webster Groves at the above address for 45 years. The small town feel of a community, along with many cultural opportunities, have been the continuing attractions. As a psychologist, I am daily reminded of the importance of a sense of belonging and community to persons of all ages. The current Old Webster development puts at risk these qualities being lost. A scaled down project and one that preserves the natural forestation is a direction the planning must take. Thank you for considering these concerns. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. From Susan W. Blaine.
So if there's anyone else that's here who wants to speak about one of the items not on the agenda, this would be the time to raise your hand. If you're here to speak or listen to the presentations on the 2-family residential or the 1-family residential, if you want to hold off, there will be a time for public comment for that.
Anybody?
Mar, do you see Rudy raised his hand?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to hit allow to talk.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm sorry. If the comments could be provided, this is more of a point of order thing. If the comments could be provided via PDF or distributed PDF, I think that would be very helpful. Thank you.
I'm sorry, provided to whom?
On the with the minutes or so forth, or distributed
Oh,
electronically or so forth?
They will be distributed when that item comes before the Plan Commission. It's not before the Plan Commission as of yet.
Okay.
So it's a public record that we'll hold on to for the item when it does come before the Plan Commission, but the redevelopment is not before the Plan Commission as of yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move into the next item, which is public hearings. And the first item is 20 PC 06 zoning code text amendments. Go ahead.
So first, I'm just going to give a quick reminder because we do have a number of people listening. The PowerPoint and recording of the staff presentation for these next 2 items will be made available on the city's website at the end of the day by Friday for anyone who was not able to attend or would like to see the information further. We have received a number of comments in regards to these items. So what we were going to do, the comments that have been emailed to us, if someone is in attendance and would like to speak in addition to have already sent their comments in, we will not read those comments. We will allow them to have their 3 minutes. All the comments that have been received, we will put in the formal record. But we will also allow for anyone who might be attending who wants to speak, who has not sent anything in as of yet, to raise their hand when we get to that point in time. Just as a reminder, each speaker will have 3 minutes, and we'll start again with those that we've already received, offering up the opportunity for them to speak instead of us reading their comments. And then we will allow those that raise their hands to speak next. I'm going to start with one of 2 public hearings. The first is a continuation of a code amendment that we are looking at to amend the zoning code to allow for 2-family residential, which would include 2-family dwellings in both duplexes and townhouse configurations. And what we had I'm just going to remind you that we had started discussing at the last meeting was the fact that this is something that many communities across the country are looking at, finding ways to be more equitable and have more inclusive zoning, not just the standard single family zoning. Many of the cities that have been working on this, Minneapolis, Portland, Seattle, most of them have a much more intensive either public system of transportation or grid system with larger means to get people around. So many of our smaller inner ring suburbs are looking at other ways to address this through different types of ways of changing their zoning. So one of the things that we've been looking at is trying to make an incremental change. And this incremental change is still taking into account that we have smaller local streets. These smaller local streets might have less capacity for utilities and city services. And we want to ensure that we can provide the same things that we're providing while still allowing for more inclusive types of zoning and potentially in the way that we're providing that zoning, more affordable housing. We had provided in the last meeting showing a little bit more about what some of our current definitions are. Those definitions include things like having a definition of single family dwelling, having a definition of single family attached, and 2-family, as well as dwelling multiple. Those were changes we had made to the zoning code a while back when we were making some amendments in 2017. But it was interesting, we added some of those changes in, but it really still didn't allow for 2-family or even single family attached in our codes at that time. So what we're trying to do is working with those current definitions, look at some other options that could be made available. One of those options is looking at the opportunity to do 2-family residential. Currently, our code does have a definition that states that you can have 2-family residential, but only if 40% or more of the houses are already a 2-family on a particular block, which essentially leads us to have virtually no 2-family or townhouse type ability within the community. We did run some numbers. We have almost 8,100 single family residential lots in the city. Over 5,500 of those lots are zoned A4. Those are the lots that you can see on the map in a darker yellow color. So they're scattered throughout the city in different locations. And within both the A4 zoning and even in a couple of the other zoning districts, we have less than 50 duplex or townhouse type lots currently within the entire city. Even that's a little iffy. St. Louis County has some of them designated as saying they're a duplex when they're not actually a duplex. So the number could be actually as small as even just 30. The primary streets that have them right now are a couple streets that are over near the high school and a couple streets that are over near Webster University. What we wanted to do this evening was to start a discussion of what are the key points that are important for us to look at in terms of drafting new amendments to the code to allow for a duplex or townhouse type zoning that would amend the single family residential A4, which currently allows for a duplex or a townhouse, but doesn't specifically allow it in the entire area with all of the A4. And these are some of the key things that we think are important for us to delve deeper into as we are making these code changes. The first would be the minimum size of a lot to allow a duplex or a townhouse. Because we have quite a few smaller substandard lots, it might be important to look at that and look at the minimum size that would allow for this. Looking at the option of an accessory dwelling unit as being the second unit on the lot. Currently, our codes do not allow accessory dwelling units unless it is part of the overall living unit for a particular family. Looking at what the setbacks would be for shared structures. If you don't have a duplex where it's one unit over the other, if you do have it more of a townhouse design, what those setbacks are going to be and what kind of setbacks you might need on the lot to access the back of the lot for parking. What the minimum floor area ratio would be, which is going to tie a little bit into our second public hearing, because we are also looking at floor area ratios in the residential that right now seem to be quite large, and looking at what those options would be. So we want to make sure we tie that carefully to our other code amendments. And then what would the minimum parking requirements for having 2 units be? At the bottom of the slide, it shows that currently we have shown drawn in red with lines through it, the code section that we would remove out, which would currently says you can only have a 2-family dwelling if 40% or more of the frontage on the same side of the street between 2 intersecting streets is already occupied by multifamily or 2-family or multiple family dwellings. We want to remove that out of the code section. I wanted to talk a little bit about this minimum lot size. Currently in the A4 zoning, we require that you have 7,500 square feet for a brand new lot, and it gives a certain set of setbacks in terms of where you can build within that lot size. We have over 4,300 lots that meet the 7,500 square foot minimum lot square footage out of the 5,500 lots that are zoned A4. So we have over 1,100 lots that are even less than this. And the concern would be that if it's even less than this, we're already having issues with oversized homes on some of the substandard lots, that it might be important to require at least the basic minimum 7,500, which would be potentially split into 2 small half lots to get the 2 units onto this lot size. So this is just something I want to throw out there for us to have further discussion on. I'm going to go through each of these items and then just leave it open for us to discuss what additional information you want staff to provide so that we can start drafting some red line codes for what we would potentially change. Another option that we need to look at is the option of potentially having an accessory dwelling unit as a second unit on the lot. So we've been talking about this being a 2-family structure, which would mean potentially building something new that's not there now that would allow for 2 homes, either in a townhouse configuration or in a duplex configuration. But there is the possibility or the option that we might want to look at that many times you can use an existing housing stock that you have and provide that unit within an existing structure. So in some communities where they do have this opportunity, they provide the additional units either in something that might be up in the top floor of something where it's a smaller unit up on top, or in a basement. Some of them do them attached as an addition on the back. So you have an existing smaller size house and you create a second unit on the back of the house. And then in some cases, in some communities, they do allow a completely separate unit, which in our codes currently, you can have someone who lives in an accessory unit on your lot, but they have to be part of your overall family unit. So right now you could have a mother-in-law suite, but you can't rent it out as a separate unit. And I think that's a much bigger discussion that we weren't really ready to tackle at this time, but we wanted to throw that out there too, because that might be something to look at or might be important. We'd still need to look at, again, minimum lot size, how much coverage there is. There's a lot of other things we'd want to think about if we were going to address something like that. But I wanted to throw that out there as another thing to think about so that we're really covering all of our bases when we make this code change. The next thing we need to look at is the relationship of shared structure setbacks. One thing we'd started doing a little bit of drafting on based on some other communities is that many times you look at what that side yard setback typically would be, and you make it a 0 lot line when you do a townhouse type thing where it has a party wall. So looking at this, there might be the opportunity where someone says, well, I want to do 2 townhouses, and instead of either renting them, they might want to sell 1 unit. And if they do that, they might try to create a new lot line or a condominium type configuration where people own their actual unit that's attached, but the 2 units are simultaneously on one single lot. So we would want to look at what some of those options are in order to ensure that these could still be either sold as smaller townhouse units or that they would be able to be rented out. So there'd be a lot of different opportunities for this, but we need to make sure we understand what those setbacks would be for the shared structures. The next thing that's quite important is our floor area ratio. In our other public hearing, we're going to be talking a lot about the concern that this floor area ratio for lots that are less than 7,500 square feet is currently too large, and that it potentially needs to be addressed and made smaller. So when we started drafting or looking at what potentially we would need to have, we tried to tie in if you had 2 family structures or that they were attached to each other, that you would need at least a 3,750 square foot lot. And it would give a floor area ratio for that sort of half of a lot. We probably need to look at that and see what the implications of those are, whether it's still going to create too large of a massing of one house next to another house. If you have 2 units in it, is it going to, we were basing ourselves off of some of the initial numbers of current floor area ratios that we have in the code, but we might want to look at that in concert with the other public hearing. We also want to look at the minimum parking requirements for both units. As a reminder, last year, you all worked very, very hard for a number of months on parking code amendment. It is currently before the city council right now. It was delayed due to holding off on public hearings. And it's before them at this time. One of the things that's in the chart is it's in there as if you do have a 2-family dwelling, you should have 1 parking space for each unit. We currently have under multiple family dwellings, it's 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. Usually the thought behind that is that when you have multiple family dwelling units, many times they don't have a lot of off-street or on-street parking in front of them because the lot goes back and it might not have a lot of additional parking. And there's the idea that sometimes there's guest parking and other things like that as people are visiting. And many times when you have a single family lot or even a 2-family lot, it usually has a long enough driveway that it covers both the units and there isn't as much, you don't have as many units trying to also share the small number of on-street parking spaces in front, which could be 1 or 2 spaces. So we probably want to look at that again and make sure that we're all comfortable that it's just 1 space per dwelling unit. I think staff is pretty comfortable with that, but I think it's something that needs to be further discussed. So those were the key items that we wanted to bring forward and see if you were in agreement that those are all the key items that we should look at in making this code change to essentially remove the restriction that 2-family structures can only go when they're already on the block, a certain percentage, but still allowing them at this point in the A4 zoning, which I think you saw on the map, kind of covers a wide range of areas within the city. So thoughts or questions for staff?
I just have a question, or I guess I have thoughts. Do you see the 2-family or the attached coming as on a single lot, like we have a lot of, A4 units, or do you see that as part of a plan development that they could use that definition of a 2-family? Do you see, I guess the question is do you think people are going to actually use it on an individual lots?
I talked to a couple developers who have said that if that opportunity was available, that they think that it would be something that they might take advantage of on a single lot basis. And again, that's just me talking with a couple and explaining to them that we have some code changes we're looking at. I would hope, the hard part that we're having right now is our stock of 1,100 to 1,500 square foot houses are the ones that are being demolished. And we're losing those and we're getting 2,600, 2,800, 3,000 square foot houses. I would hope that if we had this opportunity, if they did tear one down, they would potentially put two as a townhouse configuration or a two-family structure configuration back, which would give us an opportunity to bring back some of that smaller scale type of housing.
Would that sort of, if you started putting two families in between those, would it take away some of the character of a neighborhood?
That's why we were hoping to keep the floor area ratio in concert with what we already have. So the idea would be that if right now we allow a 2,600 square foot house on a property, that we would keep that maximum also being in the same volumetric space that you would normally have a single family home. So making sure we still provide for the parking, the basic parking, still providing for the overall massing that you would typically see in that neighborhood, and then providing for the opportunity that you might have two doors and two facades that are attached together, but still keeping the same height requirements, square footage requirements, floor area requirements of what you would typically have on that lot.
So Mara, you could have two lots. You would divide one lot into two, is that right, with a townhouse? You'd have a common wall?
You wouldn't necessarily have to divide the lot because we were actually thinking that it would probably be something where, and again, we haven't gotten further into this. We could say that if you have a two family, you could make the lot sizes, give them the opportunity to split the lot. The problem with splitting the lot is the lot split has to go before the city council per our codes. If they simply did a condo plat, which would be sort of taking one lot and creating two condominium type deeds, they'd be able to keep it as one lot, still could sell one or the other, and the condo plat is an administrative approval. Or they could keep it as a two-family structure, like a duplex, and live in one, rent the other, and keep it all as one lot.
If it's a duplex, though, they're renting at least one of the units, is that right?
No, not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how you think of the configuration. It could be that someone has a duplex and they have their, it would be like their in-law suite. Instead of creating a accessory dwelling unit in the yard, they could create a duplex and have a family member who lives in the other unit. They could own all of it and not rent it. But yes, it could be an opportunity to rent. It could be an opportunity to sell as a condo. It could be an opportunity to have, multiple family members and having multiple units.
But you're not contemplating being able to divide that lot into two separate lots?
I hadn't as of yet, but it is still an opportunity we can address.
Gotcha. Okay.
With the townhome approach with a common wall, I mean, who would own, if you don't split the lot, then who owns the land?
Typically with that, you have some sort of agreement that explains in the condo plat how they maintain or how they address the shared space. So it would just depend on how it was set up by the developer, the person who develops it and creates it for sale.
If you say you have that 60 by 125 lot, wouldn't your minimum frontage be below 60? I mean, don't you have a minimum frontage?
We currently have a minimum frontage, but we opened up the A4 code. So if we did want to address that we would allow them to split it, we would then be able to amend that part of the code to address it in that way. If we'd prefer to keep it just that you don't split the lot and the only configurations are, requiring them to condo it or requiring them to keep that minimum lot size and lot frontage, then we would need to, just address the code amendments in a different way.
And one last.
Tony, I'm going to stop you for just a second. Mike has had his hand up because he's actually using the hand up. So I'm going to ask him if he wants to speak, and then I'll go back to you.
Hey, Mike, you're on mute. You are still on mute for me.
Yeah, I can't hear him either. Mike, you're on mute.
Hold on, I keep doing a ask to unmute.
All right.
There we
Can you
go.
hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, yeah, have me mute. Yeah, I just, if you had floor area ratio tied to the building, to 0.35, I guess, what's to keep somebody from, in essence, renting out a closet? If I got my building square foot area and you tied a floor area unit, then you've got the duplex, is the floor area ratio tied to each duplex or to the building as a whole?
We would do a combination of the overall as well as per unit. So we would ensure that you had at least a minimum requirement for the unit.
For the unit. Okay.
And right now, our initial was just thinking about potentially new structures or new additions. It wasn't necessarily taking existing structures and allowing someone to put a unit within that. We would want to look at minimum requirements if someone was going to go to a two-family.
Right, I think that's kind of where it's heading. If somebody had a building, say with an existing garage in the back, a small garage, want to keep them from using that garage as another unit if it's not a certain size or meet certain criteria fit for the unit. And so the floor area ratio need to be tied to each part of the duplex and not the total. Or other limits in the code would need to at some point avoid that.
So right now, we're not proposing to allow someone to necessarily use the accessory structures. I threw that out there to make sure we covered that as a discussion. If we did go to that code amendment, we would need to add additional things that require certain elements, but the building code does require a minimum amount of certain elements that is required for an occupancy permit. So you would still have to have a kitchen with certain working elements, a bathroom. There's certain things you have to have. So those would be required in the building code for us to count it as a livable living unit.
Does the existing code place any limits on metering 2 meters in one lot?
Yes, currently our code does not allow a second meter on a lot.
So we would need to change that also.
Potentially we'd need to change that. We would actually have to open up a whole different code section if we were going to go in that direction. And right now we were not proposing that as an amendment.
But that's going to have to be part of this if you want to get duplexes.
No, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to. So right now it says you can't have a separate meter for an accessory structure. It does not say you can't have a separate meter for two completely different living units that would be a two-family structure in our code. Our code allows you to have two-family structures and you can have 2 meters. Our code does not allow you to have a separate meter on an accessory structure. So that we would not have to change unless we went to accessory structures.
Right. So it seems like you're trying to avoid somebody renting out their 1-car garage.
Correct. Right now, it's currently not allowed.
Right. And that was my concern. I don't want to get in a spot where we make that change and you have the unintended consequence of that happening.
Sure.
Sounds like you're trying to address that.
I'm going to, just for a second, I'm going to go back to, Tony had one more question. Pam has her hand up. And then I think Maddie wants to say something too. So Tony, do you want to go back to, you had one more question?
Sure. Well, I have one more question. Well, maybe 2 more questions, but one more question. When you're talking about, okay, so we're going to the floor area ratio and you had your diagram of, what the interior. And so, in terms of parking, so if you, and we require parking to be behind the building, that doesn't leave the way you have it laid out that way. You know, if someone was to put a structure there, there would be no way to get to the back because your side yard set, I mean, if a builder came in and used all of his space there, how would you get?
Right now, this is exactly what the code says. So we always say to someone when they build a new house, you are allowed to be 6 feet on either side. However, you still have to get your parking space behind the front line of the house. So they do have to have 10 feet on one side to get the driveway through, or approximately. That's up for debate with the code right now. But you do have to still be able to get behind unless you have an alley. So even though it has the 6 foot on either side, we've had a few people who have asked about the fact that could you drive under a portion of the house that cantilevers over? As long as it meets the 6 foot side yard setback, you're actually good. So that would be an opportunity that someone could potentially take advantage of.
And then last question. You haven't said anything about height restrictions.
At this point, we were leaving the height restrictions exactly as it was. But that's again, a conversation that we could have, because we're going to be talking about height restrictions in our other code amendment discussion. And so we were trying to do these simultaneously because I think that they're going to dovetail into one another. And if we're going to change height restrictions at all, we think we would be doing it across the board. I wouldn't say that you could say that to someone that you can go any higher just because you have a duplex than a single family home. We would actually probably want to make sure that they are all the same. So we were not proposing making any changes to height restrictions.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back. I think Pam had her hand up next.
Yeah, Mara, on one of your first slides where you talked about the 8,100 homes in A4.
Yes, or sorry, 8,100 in the city.
In the single family lots, and 55 are A4. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted clarification on. And then are there, I didn't look at the map very closely, but are there any historic districts in the A4?
Yes, there's a little bit of overlap with the Central Webster Historic District. There's no A4 in Webster Park. I'd have to look. We could do an overlay and see which ones.
Okay.
But the thing is, with the historic districts, as long as the overall massing and architectural elements remain the same, if something changes on the interior, they could still be in compliance with the historic district guidelines.
Correct. I just kind of was curious about the overlap. Because I think you would need to know, we would want to know that.
Yeah, we should look at that and see what that impact would be. So I will make sure we do an overlay of those maps. Next was Jeff with a question with his hand up. Jeff, I think you're.
Yep. You hear me now? Thank you. And I apologize if this was noted at last meeting, which I missed, and I suspect I know the answer, but why are we limiting just to A4?
It was the easiest low-hanging fruit
Okay.
because of the fact that it was already in the code that it's allowed.
Okay.
So we're really amending something that's already allowed in this zoning district. So it was kind of the easiest one to tackle.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Maddie, I think you had wanted to speak earlier.
Yeah, Mara, I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more. Well, when I wanted to speak, you hadn't addressed Mike yet, and maybe you've already addressed some of this, but I was wondering if you could address a little bit more about why we're not yet looking at the accessory structures. And I know that was, at least when I went to the town hall on housing at the beginning of the year, that was of interest to at least the group I was sitting with, and I can't speak for the other group. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that. And then I have one more question.
Sure. So it's not that we're not addressing it. That's actually why I put it on the slides. It's just we had not delved very deeply into what those implications would be. We wanted to see if the Plan Commission was interested in tackling that at the same time. It might take more conversation and discussion. It comes back to Jeff's question of low-hanging fruit. We were trying to see what could be the simplest way to start tackling this and jumping into it by first addressing that we allow two-family structures. Once we delve into accessory dwelling units, we have spent a lot of time, I know me personally, going to a lot of educational sessions at our national conferences about how communities have had to tackle accessory dwelling units. At what point do they become too small? At what point do they cause potentially transportation issues and other things like that? I don't think that that's going to be an issue. I think we might be able to figure out a way to tackle it. I think the hard part is that you're going to have houses that are quite large already on the lot who are now saying, but I also want an accessory dwelling unit. And we're going to start having people saying, well, my neighbor can have it, but their house is only 1,200 square feet. Now I've got a 2,600 square foot house and I want to add an accessory dwelling unit of say 1,000 square feet. Once we add that, that's starting to impact some of our stormwater concerns and some other things that we might want to look at. So I was trying not to delve too far into it because of that potential concern to tackle. And you had a second question?
You know, I did, but I forgot it. Oh, no, I remember. Well, I guess I wanted to understand if maybe Pam or anyone else from City Council was going to give any more of an overview of some of the things that we're tackling things in phases. I guess that would have really kind of addressed that question, as it sounds like maybe we'll be looking at that in the future instead of breaking it all off at once. So just kind of understanding the big picture of what we're looking at.
So big picture is more that we're just opening up the code sections. We brought these initial code sections to the council and said, should we move forward with this? And they agreed that this was one of the, again, quick, easy next steps that we could start to tackle. It's one of the easiest ones that we could get adopted with those changes that wouldn't have a big overarching need for us to maybe look at our transportation and some other things, because you're not going to see someone taking down an entire neighborhood area with 20 houses and changing it into 40 units. I'm not seeing that happening in our existing A4 zoning. And so because of that, it was the easiest one to tackle. And in checking off some of the things that I think the City Council wanted to address, this was one of the ones that we could move forward with quickly.
And beyond that, Mara, the big picture goal is to keep median priced housing available and homes available, and to, counteract those that don't want, or not counteract, but suit the need for those that want a smaller home, or to help increase population.
So let's see, I have, I'm going to go to Charlie next and then to Mike, because
is there any discussion about the number of units that you would allow on a block? Has there been any thought about somebody coming in and doing a whole street, in other words?
Again, I don't think we were really going to look at that, only because in order to tear down all of those houses, they'd all have to go to Historic Preservation Commission, because we changed the codes that anything over 50 years old needs to go forward. And I don't see the Historic Preservation Commission approving a widespread, removal of houses that are of a certain age. We're trying, this is hopefully to encourage that we lose less homes and not encourage that we lose more homes. So we'd probably need to look at that, but no, we weren't thinking we were going to do that. We were more thinking that we would, keep the overall numbers that you still have to provide parking. So we're not assuming that we're adding all that much more if the parking is available on site, and that the overall character of the neighborhood would keep a floor area ratio with a similar footprint and square footage to what is currently allowed for single family. I'm gonna go to Mike next.
I think you addressed this just a little bit, but maybe on Miss Bliss and Maddie there. Just more of a general question. Is there, is this addressed in the land use plan or the comprehensive plan? Is there any need to look into that and update that? And I guess along those lines, if this is intended to encourage diversity and accessibility and affordability, I guess my one concern is especially perhaps around Webster University, their concerns about getting a lot of, low budget student housing, which I don't think is what we're after.
Sure. So we have a couple things that we need to address. So going back to, no, we do not have to update the comprehensive plan map because we are not changing the code for multifamily at this time. We're simply changing the code for single family, which when I say single family, townhouse, duplex, attached, they're still their own sort of units in some form or format. So we do not have to change the comprehensive plan map at this time. And then talking about, the number of units and how many of them would be allowed in a particular area. Right now, most of the blocks that are closest to the university are the ones that already have the 2-family housing. We would want to look at what those implications would be, but we'd want to look into those further probably. Tony, I think, Tony, I think had her hand up next.
Well, it's kind of, actually, Mike kind of made my point too. You talk about the bigger picture and, I think a conversation does need to be had about the location of where we would want to see these units. We have 5,500 unit in the A4 district. That's a huge swath of area that maybe we don't want, that's not appropriate to have, these options. So I don't advocate creating any more, zoning districts, but I do think location should be something that has to be kind of thought about, because it's going to come up of, I'm in an A4 and we, absolutely do not want this, but if it's allowed, it's allowed. So, and in rewriting a comprehensive plan and redoing the maps, at least people would know, or they'd have an idea that this could be a possibility.
Sure. So what I'm going to, and I'm going to do this for all the different things. What we would hope is that from all these conversations that we're having, that we as staff are going to provide you with some additional things. So one of the things that we were hoping to do is taking a map and identifying all the A4 zoning that is at least 7,500 square feet or more. So it might be that we end up determining that the 7,500 square foot lot is too small of a lot to have a 2-family. And it might be that we say, because even though 7,500 is the minimum for an A4, we have a lot of lots that are 8,000 square feet, 9,000 square feet. So what we'll probably do is try to map out for all of you which lots are less than 7,500 square feet, and then maybe have a couple colors so you can see how they spread in terms of density across the city. So that's one thing that we'll do. We'll also overlay with the historic district so that we know what those implications would be. We will probably go ahead and look at some of these other implications in regards to the condo and what we would have to do in terms of a condo plat. And then a couple other footprints based on getting back to parking. Am I summarizing, I think, all the things that people had brought up?
Mara, I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question too, Mara.
Okay, so we'll go to Christopher first.
So speaking as a proud homeowner of a 1,000 square foot 1927 brick bungalow in North Webster, I appreciate you guys looking at this. So, I mean, I think that, my question, and I have a few questions. So is this really more about, you hearing this opportunity from developers over the last 5 years, or is this really more just about losing some of these starter homes and combined with the affordability equity piece? Are you hearing that developers would like to do stuff like this, but they can't, or is it a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. I've heard from a few people of, well, can't I make it into 2 townhouses? It'll all fit on the lot just fine. I've heard a little bit about, that we can't do 2 family and that it would be an opportunity. And it is also because we are losing a lot of the smaller scale housing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see at least a lot in North Webster. I'd be interested to see maybe a map. Last time you guys shared sort of an Excel kind of table breakdown of recent additions combined with the fact that what's been taken out. I think it'd be nice to see a map of that. I'm curious, just is it scattered? Are you seeing it a whole lot more just in specific areas? So just visually curious. Another question, you've been talking about 1 lot, 2 townhomes. Is there any reason why they couldn't go to 4, or is it really just about space for this 1 lot example of 2 townhomes? Like, could you not do more than 2?
So we're tying it to what's already allowed in the A4, which A4 says 2 family. So it has a particular definition. It's not going into multifamily because once we start going into multifamily, there's a lot more parking required. Even 4 units, having the accessibility, minimum lot size, trying to figure out all of that starts getting into multifamily. Then it starts getting into potentially map changes to the comprehensive plan, potentially a few other things that, again, we can tackle, but I hope that we would be able to tackle this one first, get acceptance of this one first as, again, kind of low-hanging fruit, and then see where we go from there based on, the capacity for the community. When you think about that many more units, we're also thinking about how many more children in school and the capacity of the school district, the capacity of our fire protection district, the capacity of our utilities. So I want to try to look at it in some baby steps and not yet jump.
No, that's great. I appreciate it. I just think it'd be interesting to see where, I mean, I just know where we are, right? And so like we're familiar with the area and walking and stuff. And I mean, you see good examples of some of the teardowns that look really well done. And then you see some examples that are just don't fit right. And it just doesn't look right. And I think in those instances, you could absolutely get away with it, at least the townhome setting, just because of, I mentioned the affordability piece. I mean, my wife and I, multiple master's degrees, well-educated. And, this was the absolute top of our range just to get into a tiny starter home in Webster. So I think there's a desire for something that's not necessarily 5 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, so, that's just my personal opinion, but thank you for looking into this. I appreciate it.
Sure. And we can provide you with a map. I will tell you in general right now, even though people believe that there might be a particular location that's being sort of targeted for new construction, when you see the map, it's actually scattered all across the city. But we'll provide you with that map because I think we recently updated it. I'll have to check with Danny. I think we updated it mid 2020 or at the beginning of 2020 with all of the current ones.
And one last one that just came to me. I mean, are you seeing any of this really in Glendale, the Kirkwood side? I'm trying to think of similar examples. Maplewood probably not so much yet, but I mean, are you
having townhouses or?
Well, no, I know we're having issues in Kirkwood of the same other issues, right? People buying smaller homes and smaller lots and billing to max capacity, right? So yeah, so maybe just is Kirkwood and Glendale considering, these types of changes? I'm just not familiar with what they're doing. I just know they're similar in nature.
I don't think they're currently considered these types of these kinds of changes. But I will say that we found, and some of the text amendments we looked at, Clayton currently does have in one of their zoning categories, a similar 2-family code section. So I do know that Clayton does have it in their code section. So we were going to provide you with some examples of some other communities that had them.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Mara, this is Steve Hunkins.
Yes, Steve.
My concern is only doing A4. It's the most congested of all the streets would be the A4 size houses. And there we are, we're going to add lots of cars and other things. Why are we not opening it up other than it's easier?
The A4 was a pretty logical one with the ability to use a similar floor area ratio and not, if you use the floor area ratio with say an A2 or an A3, they're much larger size lots. So what you're really getting is you're going to end up getting probably two houses, townhouses that are 2,000 square feet each potentially, because the lot size and the house size goes up exponentially with the floor area ratio. So this keeps us within a, if right now you have a 2,400 square foot maximum, you can get to 1,200 square foot townhouses or to 1,200 square foot or less units. That keeps it again in the idea of the type of diversity of housing that we're looking for, of those types of square footages. And that's why the A4 makes it the most logical for it to go.
So it's basically all on price?
It's not on price. It's
Sounds
on,
like it.
It's on the, we're still looking at affordability, but it's on the diversity of the size of housing, because there are still people looking for a house to move into Webster at something like 1,000 or 1,200 square feet. And the few houses that are available in that, square footage size are being picked up by developers. They're tearing them down and building a 2,600 or 3,000 square foot house. So with the opportunity that if you are going to tear that down and you are going to build, we could have that opportunity that instead they could build two at a smaller square footage on that single lot and still provide some diversity in the type and style and square footage of the houses in the community. Charlie, at this time, if we're looking okay, what I was going to do is read some of the letters that we have for public comment, see if there's anyone else who is listening who wants to speak on this one versus the single family residential that we'll get to next. But I'm going to start with the first letter I have, and I know she's on. Alyssa, if you would like to, if you prefer we not read your letter and that you speak, would you raise your hand? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read. Members of the Plan Commission, I'm aware that the Plan Commission will be discussing the inclusive zoning measures of duplexes on some lots at the next meeting on Monday, November 2nd. I'm in strong support of this amendment to current zoning ordinances to allow for the construction of duplex homes. The Dismantling the Divide report eliminates that one persistent barrier thwarting integrated communities are restrictive zoning ordinances like ordinances banning multifamily housing, including duplexes. The report traces the through lines of racism in the restrictive zoning practice of only allowing large lots with exclusively single-family homes as a means of restricting suburban access and opportunity only to wealthy whites. See especially Chapter 3, beginning on page 26, entitled Zoned Out of the Suburbs, Displaced from Opportunity, More Tools of Segregation. The restrictive zoning, which has contributed to the segregation in Webster Groves, was not an accident, and conscious inclusion won't be an accident either. It will take thoughtful and direct policy measures to conscientiously create an inclusive community. Allowing for multifamily housing is one such conscientiously inclusive measure. I support this policy initiative. Thank you for your consideration, Alyssa Sullivan. The next one is from James Allen. Mr. Allen, if you would prefer to speak, or I can read, if you'd prefer to speak, you can raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read. If in fact there is a desire to increase diversity in our community, the issue of inclusive housing must be addressed. As documented in the Dismantling the Divide report, the exclusion of multifamily residences is a major barrier to achieving this goal. With this in mind, we strongly support the addition of allowing duplexes on certain locations. Doing so will make our community more attractive and inviting to diverse groups who will add to the quality of life. James and Jan Allen, 834 Pine Tree Lane, Webster Groves. Mr. Allen's associate professor at SLU. The next one is from Jackson. Jackson, I see you're also on. Would you prefer to speak or would you like me to start reading yours? Yours is rather long, so I can only read it for about 3 minutes. Okay, I see Jackson's not raising his hand. I'm going to go ahead and start a timer. Planning Commission, I'm thrilled to see our city take a step to address affordability, equity, and sustainability in our built environment. And I support amending our zoning code to allow for 2-family residential for A4 dwellings. Let me be very clear that this is a small step, and unless more change, read inclusion, follows this, we will have to take out the word progressive from Webster's mission statement. At least we wouldn't have to remove the word traditional. Webster's zoning code, and thus the entire materiality of Webster today, is based on racist exclusionary zoning tactics. Harlan Bartholomew, the Dean of Comprehensive City Planning throughout the US, was retained as an expert advisor for future building following the Webster Groves Plan Commission's founding in 1923. His legacy is more destructive than that of Robert Moses, and Bartholomew is perhaps the man most responsible for racially segregated and car-dependent neighborhoods throughout St. Louis and the country. The purpose of the PC, Plan Commission, was to focus on the greatest good for the largest number of citizens, but the non-white population did not fit into that majority. In 1951, 1 year before Webster closed the city pool for the entire summer rather than integrate it, Bartholomew's company urged Webster Groves not to annex the unincorporated majority Black Webster Heights neighborhood because it was not homogeneous in character with the rest of Webster Groves. We finally did in 1960 and immediately displaced 83 Black families, of which only 27 could find homes to stay in Webster, and commenced decades of attrition of North Webster businesses, also closing Douglas School. The building blocks that helped make North Webster a wonderful community. Now here we are in 2020 and still knowingly allow white families to gentrify and drive up the market price of homes throughout North Webster. As a result, in the past 10 years, our Black population has gone from 6.262% to about 5.7%. As far as density is concerned, Webster and other communities in St. Louis County shield reality with the Great Divorce of 1876, ignoring the fact that we would be a part of St. Louis City without it. What I mean to say is that St. Louis City is only 62 square miles, while most other American cities are significantly larger in area. We call ourselves a separate municipality in a suburban environment, which recuses us from building for the needs of the region as a whole. Many other major US cities that have adopted far more progressive policy towards zoning and are much larger in areas such as Portland at 145 square miles. If St. Louis was as large as Portland, Webster would be considered part of the city, not a separate suburb, and we would be more regionally minded. This has power. Portland already shed itself of the burden of the single family zoning entirely because they understand that it is destructive to the region as a whole, and they will be better off because of it. It's time for Webster citizens to recognize that we too, I'm going to just finish this last sentence. We too live in a community, and with that comes the responsibility to look out for our neighbors, even those that are not as economically advantaged as you. It's time to abolish our exclusionary zoning tactics, and this amendment is a start. Thank you, Jackson Hoteling. The next one is Thomas Hoteling, which I don't see him on at this time. Hello, I would like to give support to the proposed amendment that would expand the opportunity for 2-family housing. I believe that the housing standards in our town, based on a single family occupying a large piece of land, that we are encouraged to plaster to our grass. Sorry, I'm not sure, trying to read that correctly. Not only have we effectively deconstructed our environment, but the antiquated housing rules we still choose to follow do not allow for the inclusivity or diversity that Webster Groves pretends to be champion of. Allowing for two-family housing is only the start for creating a more equitable community, and I hope it is soon followed with more endeavors of affordable housing and a restoration of native species. Thank you, Thomas Hoteling. I also now have from Clark Hoteling. Good evening, Webster Groves Planning Commission and City Council. My name is Clark Hoteling, a 20-year and 1-week resident of Webster Groves. My wife, Mary Jane, and I moved here from Cincinnati with our 2 young sons, aged 5 and 1 at the time. Our primary reason for picking Webster was the public schools and the fact that the neighborhoods had old houses, trees, and we saw a lot of people out and about. I love Webster, often telling people from away that we found Mayberry. Comfortable, walkable, friendly, good public schools, and close enough to the big city and the amenities that St. Louis offers. I've also discovered more recently, as my eyes and heart have opened, is that we are a very exclusive community. For all the things I love about Webster, I've come to realize that they are really only available for a certain segment of the populace, primarily upper middle class to wealthy and mostly white individuals. I believe that truly keeps us vanilla and keeps us from being a great city with diverse populace, diverse opinions, and diverse life experiences. From my perspective, the way to make us better, to make us great, is to add to the diversity of individuals that live here. And the starting point to making that happen is to have a different makeup of where people can live. Primarily, we offer single-family homes, a few condos, and some apartments. The housing prices, the high taxes, and the high rents cater to a pretty similar group of people. Adding multifamily housing, including duplexes, is a great way to start moving Webster in a direction of being a more inclusive place to live, as opposed to the exclusive nature we have now. We need to change our restrictive zoning ordinances. Sincerely, Clark Hoteling. Next one is from Stephen Seal. We support zoning changes that would allow duplexes in residential areas of Webster Groves in order to maintain Webster as a diverse community that is accessible to all. We've seen other neighborhoods in St. Louis County and St. Louis City that are a mix of single-family housing and duplexes. And with appropriate architectural design, this can clearly be accomplished without changing the character of the neighborhood. Sincerely, Steve and Janice Seal. The next one I have is from Ruth Lee. Here are comments I would like to submit for Plan Commission tonight. I'm writing in support zoning changes that would allow for more 2-family dwellings on property in Webster Groves. Webster Groves would benefit from this change in multiple ways, including allowing for more affordable housing in the city, as well as potentially increasing the economic and racial diversity in the city. Many of the zoning regulations were specifically created in the past to exclude certain types of people. It's time to change these zoning regulations so that more people can afford to live in Webster. Thank you, Ruth Lee, 450 East Lockwood. Those are all the ones we have that were emailed in ahead of time. I know there are some other people on the meeting right now. If anyone else would like to speak that did not have their words already read, please raise your hand and we can provide you the opportunity to speak. Anne, I have put you on able to talk.
Thank you, Mara. I just want to say I apologize for sending the email that I sent was not related to this topic. I hope that it could be discussed when that topic is up for discussion, but I also just want to share my support of this change to the code for A4 and also share the questions of the other members of the commission about expanding it to potentially other zones. So I appreciate your thorough explanation of why A4 is a target, and it seems like this is a barrier that could be easily removed to increase affordable housing opportunities in our community. So I just wanted to share my support, and I appreciate all the time that you give to caring for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, I've now added you. If you want to unmute yourself, Stephen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's really remarkable what you're doing. I'm 79 years old. I grew up in Webster Groves. I eventually spent most of my life in Florida and in Washington, D.C. And I come back now and I live in the Central West End. And I just want to note that what you're doing is remarkable. When I was in Washington, I lived in a community that was 50% African American and 50% white, and it was the best experience of my life. So I'm proud that I grew up in Webster Groves, and I'm proud of Webster Groves.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak that's on the call? So Charlie, seeing nothing at this time, we could move on to our next public hearing. If you wanted to ask for a vote on continuing this hearing to the next meeting.
Yeah, so is there a motion to continue 20 PC 06 to, what is it, December 7th, is that right?
That's correct.
Keep the public hearing open and continue this till December the 7th. Is there a motion to that effect?
Motion to keep it open.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to continue the public hearing on 20 PC 06 to the December 7th, 2020 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Okay, we'll go on to the next item, which is 20 PC 07 zoning code text amendments, residential dimensional regulations.
So as a reminder, this is similar to the last one. What we're going to do is talk about a couple of the key things that we think are important for you to be looking at, and then trying to get some basic information from all of you in order to determine what staff should be providing you to help you make some determinations so that we can get some red lines going. So as a reminder, the reason why we brought this forward is that back in 2017, we'd made some code changes to start decreasing the overall square footage size that was guaranteed on some of the smaller size lots. We had talked a little bit about height and what the definition of a half story was and how large that could be. And then we had also discussed a little bit, but not really at that time, finished floor elevations on sort of sloped lots. So those are the three key things that staff really thinks might be important for us to address in regards to looking at some potential code changes to try to address oversized homes that are being put on some of these lots that are smaller in size and that are potentially not in keeping with the rest of the character of the overall neighborhood and in their size and scale. So first, a reminder that floor area ratio is a ratio of the square footage of the house in relationship to the square footage of the lot, and that attached garages count for a half of the square footage of the garage towards that maximum. And that if you have a one-story home, it makes a very different footprint configuration within the setbacks that are allowed than you do for a two-story home. And when we addressed this in 2017, we reduced the guaranteed house size to 2,600 square feet for undersized lots. At the time, the code allowed for 2,800 square feet. Staff had proposed going down to 2,400 square feet. The city council eventually approved 2,600, sort of split it in the middle. But we wanted to give you a little bit of the numbers as to why we're still seeing some concerns with the 2,600 square foot. Right now, as a reminder, there's almost 8,100 single family residential lots around the city. Just under 1,800 of those lots are exactly 7,500 square feet or less. So we have 22% of our lots are actually undersized and are quite small. In the last 10 years, I ran the numbers. We've had 170 new homes. 30 of those were on lots of 7,500 square feet or less. And 98 of the new homes were over 2,600 square feet. So 57.6% were over 2,600 square feet in terms of the new structures. We then wanted to run a few other numbers. We had put in the amendment that there could be an opportunity that we still had, that if you went before the Architectural Review Board and showed a configuration of the other homes that are within 150 feet of it, that you could get your floor area ratio to go up. And I think the opportunity here is that we could reduce the square footage on smaller size lots, and that if someone really was able to prove that it was in keeping in that particular neighborhood, that it could go up larger, that it had the opportunity to still go before the ARB and ask for that. But we are concerned that the overall size of homes on the substandard lots is getting larger and larger, which puts our floor area ratio way above what we had already approved as the maximum. Again, over the last 10 years, 170 new homes, 73 of those demolished a house of less than 1,200 square feet. 42 of them demolished a house between 1,201 and 2,000 square feet. And then again, most of them that were being built were 2,600 square feet or larger. 28 of them were vacant lots, which in many cases were a second half of a lot that had been undeveloped for, decades and decades and decades, in some cases since the 1800s, when the lots were a lot of small lots next to each other. So we are seeing a little bit more density coming in, and having a new 2,600 square foot or larger house going in between where there had been nothing for a long period of time has been a concern for some of the neighbors. Just a reminder, we did gather data on the 88 homes that were submitted after we made the changes in 2017. I'm not going to go through all of these numbers, but just as a reminder, only 9 of the 88 homes were less than 2,000 square feet. In most cases, the houses that were less than 2,000 square feet were where the homeowner had specifically bought the lot, had hired someone to build a house for themselves. It was not a developer-led or driven house. You also note that 28 of the homes of the 88 were built on lots less than 9,000 square feet. So again, quite a few in the last few years from 2017 to 2020 were built on sort of smaller size lots. And when they're built on the smaller size lot and get a guaranteed square footage, that kind of puts your floor area ratio up quite high, up to almost, in some cases, 40%. We're also concerned a little bit about height. You can see in some of these photos, there's a red line showing where the height of the roof of the house next door actually is. When you see it in relationship, you can see the house that's next door. Again, I understand there's a difference between having a 1-story house next to a 2-story house, but in concert with that, we allow a 2.5-story house in our codes. You're allowed to have a finished floor elevation that's an average of the house on either side. So in some cases, it can be 4, 5, and 6 feet taller, just to get into the floor area, the finished floor of the first floor of the house. So you'll see this in a couple of these configurations. So we probably want to look at and potentially just discuss what it means in terms of height. Coming back to preservation of grade, currently our code has that the finished floor elevation of the front facade shall not exceed more than 1 foot of the average of the house on either side. It doesn't really take into consideration when you have a very sloped street that essentially puts the finished floor elevation of a house sometimes halfway through or almost to the height of the first floor of the house next door. So when you see something like this, it becomes a concern, and it might be that we need to start looking at and addressing, looking at the preservation of existing grade. So those were the key items that staff felt were pretty important to look at and address in our single family residential zoning code. It will tie back if we do decrease some of the floor area ratios. It will tie back to the 2-family structures too. But these were some of the items that we wanted to address and wanted to see what questions that the Plan Commission had and what items we might be able to provide to help you move forward with some of these items.
Mara, this is Annie. Hi. What do you think that, like, with the proposals, we can really not necessarily stop, but slow down us becoming the next like Ladue and De Pere with all these new houses? I mean, there's a house right across the street from me, and it's and I'm curious. I want to do what we're going to do with, I hope, stopping us from being like the next Ladue and De Pere, and keep, Maddie had a new phrase, not starter homes, but for some of us, I don't want to move. It's my forever home, but it's only 2 bedrooms. And yeah, I don't know. I just really want to make sure that we're preserving like South Webster from becoming, 2 stories, and the rest of North Webster, just all around. Yeah.
So I think there's a couple of considerations. One thing that I want to make sure you're clear on is that if you are going to, we're not going to stop people from being able to get a 2-story home, because if you say to someone that they can't have a 2-story home, and then the neighbor next door has a 1-story home and they want to stay there because it's their forever home, but now they have 3 kids and they want to stay in the community and they need to do an addition, going up might be something that they need to do versus going out. So you're going to have to remember that there's still going to be something that we need to guarantee in certain zoning districts, that you're allowed to have a certain amount of height and square footage that's consistent. But what we were hoping is that these code changes would start to have a little bit more impact, that you look at what's surrounding you in terms of trying to, we do get developers quite often who will have told the neighbor next door that we are requiring them to build it at 2,600 square feet. That is absolutely not what we're doing. And so we're trying to look at the idea of that 2,600 square feet, isn't necessarily what fits well with that lot size in that particular location. And that maybe we need to look at something that is a little bit smaller and more in conformance with the average lot house sizes that we have. I will tell you, in 2017, we did have a concern by some of the architects, some of the contractors, that by limiting this square footage, you're limiting what someone can do to stay in the home that they want to stay in and build additions to their home. So we did run those numbers in 2017, but at a certain point, you outgrow that lot. Like at a certain point, you can't keep adding on the 1,100 square foot addition, the 1,200 square foot addition. So at a certain point, we do have to have something that it might mean that you've outgrown your house, and you might need to find another place if you want something that's that much larger. Hope that answers, I think, your question. Mike has his hand raised next.
Yes, thanks for the historical numbers there. I just noticed, and just my perception, walking around my neighborhood there, it seems like a lot of people have bought 2 lots, and they may be 10,000 square foot lots, 11, 12 even, and tore down the 2 houses and built 1 back. I'm wondering how common that was, if that was, I didn't see it included directly in your numbers.
I don't know of any that have bought 2 lots. Let me rephrase that. I think I only know of 1 in the 8.5 years I've been here, where someone has torn down a house next door in order to build an addition on their house. I haven't seen that as a regular thing that we're seeing. Tony, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a question. I'd be interested to know kind of the thoughts of Architectural Review Board, because these houses come before them, and they are to be looking at a streetscape in their, approval process. I mean, I'd kind of like to know what, especially the one house that you showed that was, kind of towering over. I mean, I know if you can't, if it's allowed to build it, everybody's going to, try to build as much as they can. But I mean, we have an architectural review board that's supposed to, be that's part of their job. And I'd be interested to know what their thought process is when they see something like that comes before them.
So we definitely can ask them, and I can put it to them to show them what we are looking at. I do know that we had one house that was quite large, quite towering over a neighbor. The ARB denied that one. It then appealed to the city council, and the city council overturned their decision. So there is that one that happened. I know when the one that you saw in the picture came forward, there was a lot of discussion about it, but because the zoning codes allowed it, there wasn't much that they could say in terms of the finished floor elevation, or that it was a 2-story house, or that it was at the absolute maximum 2,600 square feet that it could go. So I think that they will have some feedback. So I will ask them, and if they can provide it to me in writing, I will ask them for that to provide to the Plan Commission.
Thank you.
I know we have, before we get to any attendees that are not Plan Commission members, any other Plan Commission members that have any comments before I go to the public?
Yeah, Mara, this is Steve Hunkins. What does the city think is the proper square footage of a substandard lot?
We don't know that yet. We actually wanted to kind of open it up to a conversation and maybe run some numbers in a couple different ways. What we were thinking about doing is taking the substandard lots and running some scenarios on them with some floor area ratios, seeing what might look, what the numbers would be if we take those lots. And so we were trying to figure out, some scenarios based on what you all thought.
What's the smallest substandard lot do we have that's buildable?
So the problem is lots that had a house on them are considered a buildable lot. If the house has been demolished, and if they can meet the 6-foot side yard setbacks on either side, and if they can meet the ability to get a parking space behind the front line of the house, which means 10 foot on one side and 6 foot on the other, just about anything could technically be buildable. You might have to get a tiny house on a couple of them. But we do have a few 25 or 30 foot wide lots in the city. In most cases, they're maybe 50 foot wide or 40 foot wide, which means that they're still already 10 foot less than our minimums. And then it just depends on how deep they are. Some of them are not very deep, which causes, based on configurations. So we'll provide you with a list of, sort of the scenarios of how many different lots we have that are of certain sizes. I know we have a couple 5,000 square foot lots, which when you're guaranteed to get a 2,600 square foot house on a 5,000 square foot lot, that's pretty crazy. But we'll provide you with some of those numbers to show you what we were thinking of. Any other Plan Commission members before we go to members of the public?
Yeah, Mara, I have a quick question. For the Architectural Review Board and the Historic Preservation Commission, do they have, like, for us, we have like the 5 guiding principles. It seems like improving houses, I don't know, to me, that shouldn't be torn down. Or do they have principles that they have to like follow? Or is it just, we think that house should be torn down, it's okay?
No, there's a very specific set of regulations that it's not, the regulations isn't the word, but they have a very specific set that they have to go through to approve. And we have created a new application and checklist of all the items that have to be provided. It's pretty extensive at this point, and we did that recently as an amendment to their code.
Okay. Okay. Can you send that to us at some point? Or I don't know how to find it. I would love.
Yes, it's the Historic Preservation Commission application is online with a checklist.
Okay,
And if you can't find it, just let us know and we can provide it to you.
thank you.
Okay, if everyone's okay, I'm going to go to members of the public. I'm going to start with Rudy.
Hello?
Yes.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted.
Wonderful, thank you. Many recorded parcels, legally recorded parcels, are number of different subdivision lots that have when the larger piece of property was subdivided. So I wish you would speak in terms of recorded parcels. That is, somebody may own a piece of land, which is part of lot A or B or C of Rivas Place subdivision. So just language, recorded parcels, please. And I wish I could unmute right now.
I'm sorry. Rudy, you said you wish you could unmute right now?
I'm sorry. I see raise hand or lower hand. I don't see a mute unmute button.
Oh, okay. So you've said what you wanted to say.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. And Rudy, for the record, can you give us your last name?
Rudolph Beuce, B-E-U-C.
Got it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. For anyone else that's on, I see one more. Hold on just a second.
Here we go. You ready? Hi, I'm Lorraine Morris. I just wanted to say thank you for having this conversation. I really appreciate the new photos as well, because I happen to be that little blue house that's being engulfed by the house next to me. And though we try not to take it personally, it really has changed the I should say, the overall feel of our short little, because the picture doesn't tell you, the short little dead end street that we have that was traditionally just cottages. So with it, I'm glad that you're looking at it, and thank you for taking the time. But more importantly, I just wanted to say that, you know, Webster, to me, I grew up here and I had a big house when I grew up. But when I became an adult and I was out on the road all the time, a small house was much more convenient for me. I could shut it down, I could leave, come back, and I didn't have to worry about all the square footage. And I'm really happy in the small house and a little tiny street, and the kids play in the street because it's dead end. So please keep in consideration that we do have the need for different types of housing, because we have different ways of living, and some people like a lot of space and some people need to be able to have smaller locations. And really the vibe of our street is living in the street. We all as neighbors commune out in the middle and stay in touch. So I just want to say thank you for addressing this. It's really important to me, being a lifelong resident here in Webster and growing up here, that we do keep in mind that size isn't always the matter. It's the quaintness, it's the street appeal. Our houses are starting to look all the same. I know they kind of did maybe back in the day when they were building in the 1900s, early 1900s. I think it's very important. So thank you for listening. Over.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that's on the call that would like to speak? Charlie, I don't see any other hands at this time. I would request that we hold the hearing open. I am going to try to provide any comments from ARB, some additional information about HPC, just so that you all understand how the demolition gets approved. And then we'll provide you with more detailed information about the square footages of the lots that are smaller than 7,500 square feet. Run some numbers on some potential for floor area ratios and what that would mean for that. And I think run a couple of more scenarios about existing grade and height.
Could you also give us some addresses? I'd like to run by and look at some of these houses.
Yes.
Yep, I was just gonna say thank you for the examples that you gave.
So I could see what the neighborhood, see what the streetscape looks like.
Yeah, just so you
couple-
know, the picture that you're seeing, so you've got the blue house and then you've got the house next to it. There is currently, if you keep going up the street, another new house under construction next to that. We'll send you some addresses. I'll also, because we were talking about it in the first one, we'll send you a map of all the current new homes that have happened in the last, I think our map was like the last 10 years. It might be less than that, but we'll provide you with the latest map and we can provide you with some addresses.
Thank you.
We ready for a motion? Mara,
Yes, sorry.
ready for a motion, do you think?
Motion to keep open till our December 7th.
Second.
To second, it's been moved and seconded to keep the public hearing open on 20 PC 07 zoning code text amendments, residential dimensional regulations. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Okay, next time would be other business, right?
Yes. So just a quick update. I would anticipate that we might know by the end of the month what timeframe might be for the redevelopment area to come before the Plan Commission. We definitely won't have it for December, in case anyone was thinking that we might have it at the public hearing in December. The earliest we would have it would be January. So we will keep you informed as we move forward with that and as it comes before the Plan Commission.
Probably no one will show up for that meeting.
What?
I said no one will show up for that meeting.
No.
Yeah, we'll work carefully on that and figure all that out in terms of making sure that we have a way. I think this was our first time trying to handle going back and forth between various members holding their hands up, and we'll get better at it as we continue.
Mara,
I would
Mara, I have a question.
Yes.
What are the rules of order for that on that? Like, do we have, we don't have a time limit, but like in terms of comments, there's no comment limit for P and Z, or what are the sort of?
There has not in the past been a comment limit for it. We usually give the reminder that if you're going to speak, that you don't repeat what someone else has already stated, so that you don't get the same thing that each person comes up and says, I don't want X. But other than that, we would hope that we would be able to provide the opportunity for everyone who wishes to speak to be able to speak. I would anticipate that any type of rezoning for that will be extended over multiple meetings, not just one. So potentially what we would recommend is that we would probably, similar to something that we did before the Plan Commission, or the City Council, we'd hold a hearing with a presentation and not take any comments at that meeting, and then potentially focus on opening up the next meeting with comments at that time, so that people would be able to provide things in writing ahead of time, that would be able to get a better list of who wants to speak at the meeting. Some communities do it that they get through that entire list, and if they do have available time, they will allow people to just raise their hands. So we might need to look at the potential of having people sign up ahead of time by a certain date and time, which some communities have done that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Other business?
If anyone has any questions about anything else, I know for some of you, you might have heard we are getting a urgent care down at Laclede Station and Big Bend. It's something that's already zoned for it, so you will not see it. It's going for informational purposes to the Architecture Review Board on Thursday so they can get some initial feedback. And they're going before the Board of Adjustment this month for a variance for a setback. So we do have that. It's the former used car lot for the Subaru dealership. We have a couple other projects that are coming in, a couple other new businesses have opened up. If anyone has any questions on any of that, I'm happy to answer those.
Mara, what happened to the McDonald's on Manchester?
Wait, on Manchester or you mean Big Bend?
No, Manchester in it said McDonald's of Webster Groves, but I feel like it's Rock Hill, but it said McDonald's of Webster Groves on Manchester.
They're owned by the same guy that owns the one in Old Orchard. They're owned by the same person.
Oh, okay. Because that one in Rock Hill closed and it just said Webster Grove. So I was wondering about that. Okay. Weird.
Like by Hacienda?
Right.
By any? Okay.
Yeah, it's closed. Okay.
Anything new on the Regions Bank property?
So the second structure went through City Council for an amendment to the ordinance to allow a coffee shop in the front. The building has already been approved by ARB. The permit is ready to be issued. We need to talk with them now that they can put the coffee shop in. They'll have to amend the interior plans for the coffee shop on the inside, but we might be able to issue the exterior structure so that they could get started on footings and foundation, and then they could work and dovetail the amendments to the interior. But the building has been approved. They were holding off on starting the construction for the front use, which would be a small coffee shop in the front with an office user in the back.
Is there any outdoor space for that, Mara, or is it all inside?
There's outdoor space in the front because when you all approved the PC planned commercial, you allowed for a setback that would provide for an area that right now the bank has just landscaping in that front area, but there's area for an outdoor patio space.
Mara or Pam, could you, and I apologize, it's not directly planning related, but is there any update on the search for a city manager?
I don't have an update.
Okay, that's fine. I just haven't been able to go to any city council meetings lately, so.
I mean, we are still conducting interviews, and we will have an answer in about a few weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
I don't think I have any other updates unless anyone needs anything else. I could rattle off new businesses and some other stuff like that, but
I like that.
Union Studio opened up in the old Kruger Pottery location. This is a second location. Their main location is in Tower Grove in the city. They are open and they have art goods by artists, clothing, jewelry, home goods, pottery. We also have the Annex has opened up next to Frisco Bar Room. We are currently working with, you'll probably see some demolition starting, working with Union Loafers to put in a Union Bagels in the old Porter Paint location. We're still waiting for the rest of their drawings for the interior, but they have started demolition on a little bit on the interior to figure out what's inside the walls of that structure. We also have, shoot, I'm forgetting some other stuff. I think that's it right now for what I can share. I've been talking with a few potential people for the across the street from the Subaru dealership because they own another lot across the street from their main building, but nothing is solid yet on that. And I think that's everything right now. Oh, Dharma and Dwell, sorry. Dharma and Dwell is going to be opening also in the one of the old Kruger pottery spaces. They have hair products, soap products, other things, but you go and you refill them there, like you refill your containers there. So you reuse your containers and don't buy, they have all the products there that you can fill to take home. I think that's it.
Anything with La Macaroon or Macaron?
The last I heard was that he had lost his initial funding due to COVID, but that he was getting new funding, and that's the last I've heard.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Oh,
Got a
sorry,
motion?
last thing, is there gonna be, I doubt there's gonna be a Christmas party, right, this year?
Oh, I just got the email. It has been canceled, I believe. I'm sorry, I'm getting lots of emails with different things being canceled.
Sure.
I can check really quick. Hold on, I'm gonna stop the screen.
No worries,
I feel like I just got an email about that. Hold on.
It was canceled.
Okay, thank you.
I assume so, but.
Yes, and
Sad.
we're keeping, we are going to continue to keep going at this. We're going to keep going in the Zoom format for December. I would assume we were probably going to stay for January, but at that time we'll kind of make some more assessments and determine how we are going.
Mara, I know we've talked about time before and not wanting to move it, 1 month and next month we want to keep it consistent, but does the Zoom accommodate an earlier time, like 6:30 or 6? I'm just literally just throwing that out to think about, I don't know.
So we can definitely have that conversation. The hard part with Zoom is that we have one Zoom account right now that the entire city's using. So for example, this evening, the Green Space Committee was meeting on Zoom, and as soon as she ended, we took it over. We've talked about getting a second Zoom account. At what point do we really need to do that? There's very few overlaps. We can probably look at it. I don't know what other people feel about the earlier time. Sometimes it's harder for people to get dinner, get home, get family situated. 7 was good.
I am home. That's my problem. Stuck it up. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just,
But if anyone wants to think about that, I'd prefer we keep it the same, at least for December. But if you want to discuss it for January forward.
No, I was just throwing it out there. So keep going as it is. That's fine.
I feel like it could be 10 o'clock and all those things are still hard to do.
I know.
So, yeah, either way.
I got out of driving for soccer because we went this long.
There you go.
Yeah, we did our thing, didn't we?
Nice.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
See you all on December 7th. We don't see
Happy
you.
everyone.
Election night.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much, guys.
Good
All
night.
right, thanks, everyone. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.